In this video, I have a Sony CFM140. This is a mono AM/FM cassette portable unit that was given to me. And the radio works. The problem is the tape deck doesn't work. So we're going to take this thing apart and see if we can get the tape deck working. Coming right up. Let's check out the cassette and see whether that works. Gotta find a cassette that I can play on this thing. This is a cassette that I can play. I think this has just got tone. Yeah, this has just got tone on it. Now let's see if it plays the tone. It doesn't work. Okay. I bet it's going to be a belt. Open up the battery compartment. And, at least someone didn't leave batteries in it, which is usually what people do is they put batteries in it and they let them sit there for 25 years, right? And then the batteries are all corroded and the unit is trash, but at least this one here has no batteries in it. There we go. Okay, all the 2-inch long screws are removed. With the cassette compartment open, we're able to just open the unit up like that. Now, as you can see, by the time we got to this design, everything was down to a couple of ICs. So basically the radio is one IC, and then there's one IC. I think they're both, this is the IF and this is the RF. Amplifier, there might be a third IC down here for the amplifier. So let's just see what happens when I turn it on. Okay, the belt's not broken, but it's certainly not turning anything. We'll unplug the speaker to get the speaker out of the way here. That way I can work on this thing. So next I'll actually remove the deck itself. So there's just a couple screws that hold the entire tape transport in. There's 4 screws. Now before doing this, it's a good idea to run the station all the way down to the end. That way you know where you're starting. Otherwise, if the dial gets moved when you've got the gear separated here, if the dial gets moved, your calibration will be off. So it's always a good idea to run it to either one end or the other before you actually remove the chassis. Remove the 4 screws. Remove the tuning dial, and we're going to keep it all intact here. I'm not going to undo this wire clip here. That way this stays intact, and we'll put that out of the way. Now I can remove the deck itself. Unplug the head wire down here, it's the blue plug. Now I can turn the deck over, and you can see that this is just this very simple design. You get 2 belts, or 1 motor, 2 belt design. I can unplug the deck here if we want. Now we get a look at the entire unit. This has actually got 3 ICs in it. You've got your RF front end for the FM tuner, probably the AM tuner as well. This will have your oscillator, mixer, and so forth in it. You got the IF amplifier here, and you've got your record play amp and power amplifier all in one. So it's a 3 chip solution on this. Little power transformer here. Unit runs off 6 volts DC. So our problem is going to be on this. Now if I look at this here, we'll see how tight these belts are. Both of these belts are looking pretty sloppy, but this is relatively stiff, so it might not be the belt, it might be just the mechanism here is gummed up. Yeah, this flywheel is quite stiff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove the cut washer here. I just want to take the flywheel out and see why it's binding, because that might be all that's wrong with this. Is this the lubricant is dried up inside the bearing here, and that flywheel is sticking. So we just have to lift the cut washer off. Oh, what just flew off there? I think it was the auto stop lever. Just flew away. Spring here. Now it's not. Now it's turning nice and smooth. See, now it's spinning nice and smooth, whereas before it was dragging. This is in play. Where's play on this thing? This is in play, and the auto stop lever gets hit. It still releases it, so that whatever that was that flew out of here was not. It was part of this little lever here, but what the heck is it for? Is that the pause? I think that might be the pause latch. That's what that is. Yeah, that was the pause latch. When you press down the pause button, that's what latches it in place. And obviously this little spring goes on top of this like this and holds that down. So what just flew off there must have been that little keeper that holds that spring in place. And it must have worked its way loose, and that was pushing up against the bottom of the flywheel, stopping the flywheel from turning, and it just took off on me. The spring pushed it out. It would have been a little plastic, not a cut washer, but it would have been a little plastic cap that was pressed on there. Interesting. We're going to have to make our own. We'll just use a soldering iron, I think, to mushroom this plastic over to hold that spring in place. Because that little part, I saw it go flying, but you know what? It's in with all the junk, so I'm never gonna find it. It's on the floor somewhere, probably by the front door. The thing took off at about 60 miles an hour. But that's what that is. That was the cap for that holds that spring in place for the pause button. So I think what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to just use my iron, and we'll heat this up somehow and mushroom it over so that it will hold that spring in place. It's going to be easier said than done too. I can guarantee you that. It's going to be easier said than done. Okay, I've successfully mushroomed over the top of the plastic to hold this mechanism together, so when it's in play, if you press down the pause button latches and the pause button is released. So now let's just see how free the flywheel spins. Ah, perfect, that's what we want. Let's put that little belt back on here, wherever I did with it, and we'll see how it drives the take up and supply spools. Ah, that's a little better. A whole lot better. Put the cut washer back on, wherever I did with it. Right over here. Okay, the cut washer's back in place. Let's try putting the drive belt back on now and just plug this thing in and see whether we get any operation of the reels and the capstan. Make it a nice simple fix on this thing. Okay, we'll plug back in the power for the motor and the, I guess that's the switch to turn on the motor. The yellow wires are the switch to turn the motor on, and the red and black are the actual wires for the motor. So we got power, and as you can see, it turns. So I'm going to plug the record play head back in. You notice that on this unit it uses just a permanent magnet to erase the tape. So a unit like this, you could only use normal bias tape. It would not, it'll play back high bias tape, but you can't record high bias tape on this. It's a normal bias only. It doesn't use an AC erase. It's strictly a permanent magnet. So I think we still have a problem though, because even though it goes into play and it goes into rewind, and there's plenty of torque on rewind, the problem that we've got is on play there's too much torque. It's not slipping. You see? That should be, the slip clutch should be slipping. So it's not. So I got to take this thing apart again and see why the slip clutch is not slipping as it should. Because we have way too much torque on playback, and of course that will damage the tape. So one more time we'll remove the mechanism. Okay, when I put it in play, rewind, fast forward, and play. But for play it's got too much torque. It should be slipping and it's not. And that is, I believe, the hub. This hub here has got a clutch on it. The clutch is not slipping, it's seized up. So let's just take a look at that hub first. We'll deal with the belt in a minute, but let's just take the hub apart. See, it's a dual gear. The top and the bottom gear should be separated. And that slips, but it's not. It's really quite stiff. This bottom gear doesn't, it's solid drive for fast forward. This is the play gear, and this should have a fair bit of there's a felt pad between the two of them, and it should slip, but it's not. It's going on in full torque, which is going to damage the tape. So we'll take the cut washer off, so that we can lift the spool out and take a look and see what's wrong with the spool. And how these work is there's a spring here that pushes one pad against the other. But the pad gets gummed up with stuff, and then it starts to bind. That's a little better. We're just going to put a little more clearance in here. We can pop this thing apart. Try not to drop the spring. We're just going to clean up the clutch assembly with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol. Because what happens is dirt and grease and stuff gets in here and it gums it up. Still feels a little bit on the high torque side. Now what we can do is we can take a turn or so off the spring here by just cutting it slightly. If our torque is too high, you can just cut a bit off that spring. This will provide a little less push and reduce the torque accordingly. Still feels like there's too much. That's a pretty big spring for a hub that size. Let's take another bit off the spring. That's a bit better. Yeah, that's a lot better. Okay, we'll put the hub back on and put the cut washer back on the top here to hold it in place. Okay, let's see how this torque is now on this for play. That's a lot better. See, now it doesn't bind. Now it doesn't bind the gear. So after cleaning the belt with some isopropyl and letting it dry, we have plenty of torque for fast forward, and for rewind and play has the right amount. And the auto stop, well, where is it? Here it is. Kicks it out, you see. When that lever goes up, it stops. Let's put the mechanism back in and try it again. Well, this is why everybody hates working on these things, because I had a little twist in my belt for the take-up. So I just took the thing apart again, and okay, there's a twist in the belt. Also, you have to use the right thickness of belt. You can't go to a thicker belt on one of these because there's no clearance underneath the flywheel. it has the little cog sticking out for the auto stop, and if you use a belt that's any thicker than the original one, it's going to hit that cog and it's going to cause a problem. So let's just see whether it sounds any better now. Yeah, okay. I had a twist in the belt, and every time I went around it would flip over it. That sounds a little better. Okay, so I think we can put this one back together and call this one a success. I'll play a music tape on it too to see how it sounds, but I'm not worried about the speed. The speed sounded okay. Speed adjustment's right there. This is not something you're gonna really, it's not critical. It's a cheap tape recorder. I spent too much time on it. But now you know what goes wrong with these things. How to fix the that clutch, for example, for the take-up torque. If it's too high, what happens is the felt can get contaminated, or you can get dirt on it, or it can just wear and it starts to bind, and then the torque starts to go up. So normally you would change the hub. Well, you're not changing the hub on a unit like this, but that's how you can reduce the torque. Just trim the spring back of it so there's a little less tension on it. A Walkman demo tape. Lots of wow and flutter on this thing. Well, I don't want to get popped for... As you can see, it works about as well as can be expected. It could use a new set of belts in it, but that's beyond the scope of this video. It works. AM/FM works. Cassette works. It's a basic radio. We'll just reassemble the unit. Top just goes on like that. You just slip it over top of the buttons on the top, and it just pops together just like that, and it will just snap together. Put the screws back in it, and then put the AM/FM and volume selector buttons on the top. There you go, there's your pointer right there. Hard to see, but it's there. Kind of a dumb place for it. Anyway, that's it. We're done on this one. We'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.